I think first of all, I just kind of check in on some of the stuff we wanted to do over the weekend. But did anyone have any problems? Because I think we're gonna talk more about this on Wednesday. Yeah, did anyone like have a problem with this? Daisy, do you still want us to have like up to two?
If you guys have a time, then please do that. Yep.
Right.
I think it really just depends on the job because like some of them have more.
Yeah, yeah. By tomorrow, not right now. By tomorrow. By tomorrow at
By
the
Wednesday.
yeah, by Wednesday.
Right.
So the thing is, I had time to finish the chemical thing, but I had trouble with this one
Mm-hmm.
because I think I told you before, but like some sites for me, I couldn't access some. I tried looking for alternatives, I guess, and that I don't know, like with the weekend and everything, I didn't really have time to finish that part up.
Yeah, it's totally fine. I don't think that or any of us, well, Alice finished up hers and stuff, but like a lot of us didn't finish it all, and this is again like we're looking at Wednesday for this, so it'll give us time. And yeah, you mentioned you can't access some links, so if you just put it in and like put a comment on top of it, I can get around to looking at it for you. All right.
Sajin, I also found some discrepancies in that like
Oh,
some websites said that they were or they had some like restrict or requirements and some that said that they didn't.
really?
Yeah,
Let's see.
for Alabama, the one right next to it. But then also for like both websites, they don't really have like a source for the website, so I don't really know which one to believe.
Food handlers
Yeah,
biases.
yeah. At least you have some sources. Not that. Yeah.
And neither of them have a date, so we can't even check for how do I hide meeting controls? Doesn't seem like Alabama requires one, but it is on the poster board. Or just
Yes, I'm not really sure which one to believe or if you can even utilize these sources.
I definitely do want I should have made because I see a lot of the poster card ones again.
Right.
I'll just take like two minutes. Yeah, I think Alabama doesn't license board for it. Yeah, no, that's not the same. I honestly going into this, I figured a lot of states wouldn't have this policy set. Yeah, I want to just say like take with a grain of salt. Yeah, okay, we'll probably look more into this on Wednesday. But yeah, so we'll just talk more about that Wednesday. And if there are any like problems, like just highlight the cell in like red and then kind of put on the side like a comment or something about why it's a little iffy. And then we can kind of all look into it as a group.
I think I still need to look into some like sources to try to verify because I'm not really finding like an exact like
Yeah.
there's no like exact thing that's telling me like what's going on. So I think I need to spend more time looking.
Just saying, like, if you spend like 10 minutes like scouring the web and you don't get anything from like for certain states, it's most likely that they don't have such policies. I guess don't spend like over 10 minutes. Don't spend too long digging a rabbit hole where it might not even exist.
I have one question. And when we're
Yeah,
looking at like the multilingual signage requirements, are there like specific things we should be looking for? Or is it just like in general, like
we're looking for specifically a state policy or a regulation that requires states to have said like multilingual signage required.
So
It's
signing,
probably gonna be rare.
yeah, sign is in the workplace.
Workplace occupation. This was like keywords I kind of used for Alice. So like, yeah. So today's we're gonna kind of prep for Dr. Schwartzman's lecture tomorrow because we want to like I want to make sure that we really understand her research paper so that we can be more involved and like more proactive with questions when she's here tomorrow for an hour. So I'll be going over that, but did everyone like end up actually reading through the entire paper? What I'm just trying to like parse out right now is to see if because we're gonna go over the different sections of this paper. But I don't know from where to start because I was thinking we could just look at the results or discussions, and I was gonna have everyone take a paragraph or two to paraphrase so that we can talk about it at the end as a group so we get everything in the paper. Since like this is the paper we're looking at to kind of get inspiration for 2026 research paper the research paper to submit for the 2026 APHA annual expo. We really want to kind of like really understand this paper and be able to ask your questions about it. So I wanted to get like our brains flowing on this topic. And I figured the best way to refresh all of us. But does everyone understand? Okay, I'll just ask this. Does everyone feel confident about the methods? All right, we're just gonna start from the top and then go through the entire paper because so I guess I'll give everyone like because introduction is just some background information everyone needs to know. So before we go into methods, because it might be a bit hard to understand everything with all the numbers, but we all genuinely have some background of what we've been talking about for the past few days. So we'll just go read the introduction and then I'll go over the methods a little, why she has these sections out like this, and then we'll just go down and go through results and discussions or just discussions. So, but if everyone could take 10-15 minutes to finish to just start reading the introduction. So the introduction, you shouldn't read too deep into it. You just want to read it to get a base like understanding of why they're doing this research. So obviously they're looking at Prop 65 chemicals and they tied it with the California Air Resources Board and all the data to try to parse out products and chemicals that are just more prevalent and thus like they more exposed to the general population and workers or consumers. So, did anyone have questions? Anyone like super confused why anything came up? I guess like one of the first things like everyone's familiar with what Prop 65 is. So basically, they just tell you that they're looking at some Prop 65 list of chemicals, which includes name, a chemical abstract service number, date, blah blah. And they also use CARBS data. And what they really did was they took the two data sets together from or classifying chemicals for top tier priorities of elimination that are being used in say right now. So they looked at the EPA risk-based screening levels as one of their priorities. So like these outline how they chose for top priorities of elimination, which is what shows up in figure 1. I think one of the big things I just want to go over here was how they parse out consumers, yeah, how they define consumers, workers, and the general population. For consumers, they identify product categories as used on like actually, does anyone is confused on how these are differentiated? Because it comes up in different figures up later, and everyone understands like how they chose what was potential exposures for consumers versus workers versus the general population. I think defining what the general population was like the most complex out of the other two because the paper comes out and tells you exactly what they think is consumer exposure and what exactly is worker exposure, potential exposure. So like if someone could just tell me like how they categorize what chemicals were potential exposures for the general population, that'll kind of show me guys like really understand like how they section these off into these categories.
Was the question like how they are like classified?
Yeah, so like what counts as the general population exposure, like, because some might think it's consumers plus workers or just like a different thing. But basically, I just want to get it like, because the paper comes out and says product categories that are used on the body, routinely used in the home, or specialty use in the home or other. These were specifically for the consumer groups, right? And for the product categories for workers, high occupational exposures, they use it more based off of table S2, figure S2 somewhere. It's in the supporting documents. But like the widespread general population, it's not just the worker exposed and consumer exposed combined, but it's more of they were focusing on product categories specifically with the highest emission of volatile chemicals.
I think I was confused about like what they mean by emissions.
By emission.
Yeah, like so there's kind of like everyone using them. So the toxins getting released as a whole.
Oh, so when we're talking like emissions, the way I understand it is certain products just release chemicals into the environment or the exposed air around you. Or I'm not sure if it's like touch, but it seems like just emission exposure of chemicals into the environment. And there are just certain just chemicals that are very volatile and thus more likely to be inhaled or like by humans or digested or such reasons. But I just want, yeah, that's what they mean by general population. It just means the chemicals that are the general population is exposed to are chemicals that even if like they're not being used, I think, but they just constantly give off carcinogens or toxicants into the air.
So for like the general population emissions, does that mean like because I mean I don't really know like how exactly they calculated emissions, but I'm assuming that they did like an analysis of like what's in the air. So my question is like, so does that so like some of the toxins that they like filtered in could potentially not be from products and could just be like
The environment itself.
yeah like factory emissions or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, so like yeah. This when they're talking about right here in this paper, they just mean it's not from this existing environment, but specifically from products categories that they get from various data or various organizations. So like CARB here was like one that uses a survey, I think. It was CARB or somewhere else. But there are surveys that they do yearly, annually to look into like kind of product categories. And I think it's the EPA or the NTP, the National Toxicology Program, or it's one of these organizations that actually look into how much emissions emitted by certain things.
Wait, so I know that some chemicals in workplaces also get like emitted out from like factories.
Hmm.
Would that count as general population or worker population?
So you're asking if like just populate like pollution emitted from factories.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
We won't be talking about them because we're specifically looking at products. So like
Oh, okay.
from yeah, where is it? Like these categories. So we're
Okay.
not looking at any like air pollution specifically. We're just looking at toxicants that come out of or exposed through these products. I'm gonna assume that we're okay with the figures. Anyone opposed or want me to go through a certain figure? But basically just really like one sentence summaries. Figure one is is just them listing one of the few top chemicals reported by listed on the Prop 65, and they did them by top tier and second tier. So this figure basically just tells you chemicals. One, the color code is by top tier, second tier for elimination, priority of elimination. And the length of these bars just tell you how prevalent, how widespread these chemicals are, because these bars just tell you like methanol is found in the most product categories that they looked at, specifically 58. And figure 2 looks further into just specifically consumer exposure or chemicals exposed to consumers as why they're why that's used on the body, routinely used in the home. Again, the color coded by top tier, second tier, and just which chemicals of the top listed ones show up in which product categories. Same for but this is for workplace. And this is specifically for general population because we're looking at total emissions of this chemical. So the rest of this paper just goes into looking at some of the top prioritized chemicals. So I think, Sophia, you probably would have found this like the most interesting because you say you like the chemical aspect. But what I really wanted to do was go into more of the discussion and see. Actually, I was just honestly, I should start with like, did anyone have trouble reading the discussion? And if not, like, actually, I'll just stop there. Like, how were we with the discussion? Like, was it pretty straightforward when we read it, or did you guys never get to it? Or I wanted to kind of everyone to take a section of the discussion. So like either the intro and like just paraphrase paragraphs into a few sentences into a Google Doc. How many of you guys like have experience reading research papers? All right, because like I know a few of us are undergrads. All right,
Yes,
so like
but not like this subject. Like this
okay, all right. Maybe I should have taken notes on these, but I did not. So then I'll just kind of read through it with you guys, and then kind of I'll be right back. I really needed to go to the restroom for a while. Sorry. So I think we're just gonna go top down from the discussion, and no one has a problem with that. So the first paragraph of the discussion is kind of more of a introduction, so it's more broad. So again, Prop 65 highlights chemicals associated with cancer, reproductive harm, and developmental harm that are used in many consumer products sold in California. And you'll notice California is like a key, like almost the only reason they talk about, because California is like the one state that actually keeps track of these chemicals and has the only really active one using Prop 65 because they're the ones who made it. It's really hard to get this data in any other states. But again, Prop 65 is just a right to know law, as in it's for people to know these chemicals might be carcinogens or toxicants, but it's not a regulation or anything that ban these chemicals. So it's more of a notify the consumers about the chemicals presence thing. That's what Prop 65 is. And Prop 65 chemicals still persist and expose a lot of to consumers. So for example, is this chemical I will not even try to pronounce is a has a lot of health risks that's been documented for decades, but again, like it's still widely used. And this also all ties back to the purpose of this paper, which was trying to identify the high risk, so like top tier priority for elimination or substitution or just the removal of these certain chemicals from lots of products that people tend to come in exposure with, whether you're a consumer, worker, or just in general if you work in certain if you're exposed to them very often. So yeah, again, this is them summarizing what they're doing. So I'll just go over it all. So using a unique data set of consumer products sold in California, they identified the volatile chemical ingredients from Prop 65 that are carcinogens or said reproductive developmental toxicants. And then what they did was they used the speciation profiles to identify specifically 33 Prop 65 listed chemicals in products and product categories containing these listed chemicals, which then they also with other what's the word, guidelines or that rules that they came up with, thinking that was more important. They identify high risk chemicals. And out of what they did, they identified 11 priority chemicals and 30 related product categories that they want to really prioritize for elimination. So be asked to put on like regulatory restrictions or redesign from products. Oh, and if you guys have any questions or something I've said doesn't make sense, please feel free to like cut me off instead of waiting for me to stop talking or something like that. Many of the product categories you identified as targets for reformulation. I think what they mean by reformulation is like substituting out the chemical or like swapping it out for something, finding alternatives. And a lot of the product categories they identify were targets for these because they're currently being used in workplaces. And some occupations may further expose workers to products containing these volatile organic chemicals that were prioritized based on like consumer or the general population level exposures. So basically, they're looking at chemicals that obviously a lot of their chemicals that they looked at are bad, but they're saying among those chemicals, there's like few like products and product categories containing really volatile chemicals, and they're saying such as janitors, professional janitors come in contact with like those high risk or high exposure chemicals, high exposure product categories containing these high exposure chemicals much more than say other occupations than normal, and such as nail and hair salons or beauty products, consumer products, and we know automobile maintenance where workers were also more exposed to them. And these are like common sense, right? Like not common sense, but it makes sense that these people in these occupations will come into contact a lot more than any other occupations, right? So that's what they're kind of getting at with this paragraph. And again, they're just saying, wrapping it up and saying this analysis confirms that workplaces, so occupation workplaces can expose people to a range of these volatile chemicals and a lot of um, like it's not fully addressed to have workers protected against these or just educated on the risks of some of their aspects of their work. And they're going on to say that risks from these exposures are not equally distributed in the general population, again, because some are going to be more vulnerable to the others. Which I want to say, like, as a side note here, are the direction we're trying to look at for our 2026 research going on, like using this as inspiration, is looking at vulnerable demographics, right? To these. So I want like I guess while we're going through the discussion section, if we can keep that in the back of our minds and try to kind of look for, oh, maybe we want to look into this demographic or maybe look into this chemical or like a certain chemical that's you want to look at that's maybe more widespread or has great exposure even though it might not be as prevalent. So certain things like that are say see there's a lot of developmental and reproductive toxicants, right? So that means people in early life, so like babies, infants, puberty, and pregnant, and people in pregnancy are going to be significantly more at risk. or another another type of demographic you could look at is sociocultural forces. So since women, as we saw through the figures, cosmetics, personal care, cleaning products, they were all on the list a lot, but again, women tend to use that more than men. So we could think of having our research go in that direction. Or we could have research that we want to look into more into racial minorities, like hair relaxers and skin lighteners, or in case dollar store merchandise for low income populations. So like it all kind of lines it up here in this paragraph of who might be invulnerable, but also we want to do our own research and dig into it ourselves. So not everyone's gonna be interested in the same thing. So everyone just kind of like see if we want to hone in on a certain aspect and then keep that in mind as we're reading through. Because there's definitely it's hard to fully grasp everything here. This talks more about the emissions and chemical information and how like more the methods aspect. The emissions inventory undertaken by CARB, and CARB is the California Air Resources Board. Basically, they have emissions data, and where's the supporting document? The supporting document explains outlines this much better. I think Figure S2 it basically just kind of tells you what they did to get the emissions data, but they basically combine data from the EIC, the emissions inventory category, that's given from CARB, the California or something. I forget again, sorry. And they also emissions from others, where is it? Merge two data sets using their EICs. To only include EICs begin with certain thing. Okay, I want to stop there. I don't think this is actually that relevant to having to know for tomorrow. But this goes into how they got the data, what more they did on some of the limitations and advantages to using data and how they got it. So like so different just data sources they had. I don't know if you guys ever came across like a question they have, but like we only have product categories, right? We don't have specific products listed. That's because specific consumer products are not possible or not gathered by CARB data because it just aggregates data from specific products at the level product category. So they were not able to access chemical ingredient concentration for individual products, which is why we only had emission like from product category. So this is just to say, even if we like wanted to go further in depth and look into like specifically which products are causing or of which products are have the greatest like emissions or most Prop 65 chemicals, like that's just unavailable data. So it probably we could ask Dr. Schwarzman about it tomorrow, but we probably won't get too much from this aspect. So just know that that's a that's one of the limitations. You can't get product specific data. And CARB only started the reason CARB started gathering data was for smog specifically. I think that comes up in the intro that CARB conducts they just look more for reducing air emissions that contribute to smog, which is why. And they're saying that's just one of the limitations because that means they exclude some of the other hazard chemicals that might not be related to creating smog. Daisy talked about how architectural coatings and paintings, so like roofing, dry cleaning, or like industrial emissions, like you guys mentioned earlier. Like these are also sources of emissions, but it wasn't included in this paper because cardboard didn't take data on these. So like this kind of answers your questions on that and why it's not like part of the definition for their category of general population. So there's also a limitation in the nature of Prop 65. So Prop 65 contains known carcinogens. Everyone knows what carcinogens are, right? Cancer-causing chemicals, right? Okay, just double checking. And reproductive and development talk. Okay. Prop 65 contains carcinogens, reproductive and developmental toxicants, and some consumer products also include like chemical ingredients that are associated with like health endpoints health risks that Prop 65 don't look at, such as asthma, neurotoxicity, and endocrine disruption. So even if we eventually if anyone wanted to go more into the health side of things, this limitation kind of shows you like, oh, Prop 65 doesn't have it all, so it might be hard to access these data. But also, we don't want us to have like Prop 65 on like a grand like pedestal, because while it is pretty extensive, they're still under inclusive. There's still chemicals that are understudied and we just don't know about yet. So and these are reasons that's why they're like saying our analysis doesn't capture the full extent of chemicals of health concerns in California products. And there might be some variability coming from the hazard list that they produce compared to if different researchers were to use different data or sources. And one of the last limitations they mentioned was they got emission estimates for 1 year, 2020, but it was based off of, but the surveys that you used for product ingredients wasn't updated from 2015. So that's just like something to keep in mind. I don't know, are there any like questions so far or like so this part of the discussion goes on about more of the why they did this study and what they might for like future steps. I don't want to talk through this again because it's pretty boring just hearing me talk. So why don't we read let's read the first two paragraphs alone, and then we can come back with questions, or we could read the whole thing. Nah, let's just do the first. Yeah, why don't we just read through all of this? It shouldn't take too long, like 5 minutes, and then come back with questions or like anything we want to kind of discuss. All right, how are people? Are you guys done reading? But you get the general gist of how they ended the paper, right? Like how they're saying we identified these chemicals that are not currently being studied or investigated into, and how certain chemicals, especially like mothballs, have potential for like very high co-exposure. So this kind of just gets you thinking into what we might want to look into further next time or going forward. So we could also they mentioned where is it second tier, even though it's not first tier priority for elimination, there's a lot of second tier chemicals that are really prevalent and deserve further scrutiny. So reading this, I was hoping everyone kind of got where it's thinking like, oh, maybe there's some questions to ask her regarding like what we could look further into and what avenues we really can't. Yeah, like I guess that's it. And I kind of wanted to discuss what everyone wanted to like, where everyone was interested in going forward with research. Like, do we want to look at like specific demographics or economic status, or look at like area region, or do we want to specifically look into like workplace exposure?
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just like in terms of like big picture and
Mm-hmm.
like the entire scope of what our research is, are we focusing on expanding off of like this paper and this article, or are we still focused on fatalities of youth workers?
No, we're more focused on like the chemicals for 2026 research.
Oh, okay. And
Yes,
so then what was?
fatalities thing about.
I think I've been misinformed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it was ever directly said, but like 2025, that's this year, you need to submit um by I think what was it? March or something for this year's. So it's already submitted and done for. But we wanted to see if there were any other covariates like policy regulations or let me restate like the signage policies or if you need like different languages for signs or OSHA following or state or have a custom made policy for occupational guidelines. That's for 2025, but we're for 2026 for the actual like more research we're gonna dig into. We're looking more at like looking at the impacts or going off of toxicants from this paper. So, which kind of brings us into like the next one, but Daisy and I, we were just looking around. We were thinking maybe we could get you guys set on like giving you guys a broad idea of how different demographic groups in the US and Canada, as it combines the two, at different risk of occupational chemical exposures. But like this paper is kind of like the direction we're trying to go into. And we don't really have like anything hashed out yet, but we were using this paper that Dr. Schwartzman was a part of as getting more knowledge and background information and getting people like more accustomed to this area. I think from like the bottom line I was getting out of this paper was chemicals are well, a lot of our in-home usage products are going to be a higher risk, but also like I don't know how much of a risk they are. So like I wanted to kind of ask that in tomorrow's lecture with Dr. Schwarzman because she's coming in to speak to us about this chemical and I think maybe toxicants in general. I'm not too sure. She's only here for an hour-ish. But yeah, I hope you guys kind of have like some questions you guys might want to ask her. If you guys were lost of, I hope like kind of understood something a little better. But yeah, that's and just on top of that, with the way we want to go about our research for 2026. Yeah, that's mostly it for this paper for now. I think I'm gonna, so if we go here, well, that's the end of that paper. Does it like, before I move on, is like anything anyone wants me to go into? Everyone's cool for tomorrow when Dr. Schwarzman comes in to talk about this. And like we have a general idea of like why we read the paper for like for 2026 research. All right. Yeah, and if we go to not that one, go to this 2025 APHA research file folder. We have something called 2026 APHA research literature. And here, actually, I don't know if she has this. I'll bring it to the top, but Daisy and I wanted you guys to read this paper about, which is the one I just showed you guys. I'll actually link the full paper. And you don't need to like scour through everything, just get an idea of what they did and some of the things you might want to look into. These articles up here aren't are just a kind of everywhere, more of a broad scope. They're not research papers, they're just articles, so they might give you a idea of certain things. But we want you to read this for we want to read you guys to read this for Wednesday, if that's okay. And it'll just you can read through the abstract to get a general idea. So That's just, we don't have to read this by tomorrow. For tomorrow, I guess, if possible, reread the paper, just have something to talk about when Dr. Schwartzman's here. And after Dr. Schwartzman's here, I mean, after her lecture, we're going to have, can I share, can everyone see my screen? I don't know if I share a tablet. Okay. Yeah, if we go to our spreadsheet and go to our material assignment, Daisy showed us this before initially. Basically, on Haley, I think, is going to talk about this a little. These are the slides that go with how to write a scientific research paper. I would advise you guys to unroll below. Read Iman's first. Iman's is a bit more broad. But yeah, she wanted to make sure to let you guys know to give these recordings a look, and you guys can follow along with the slides. But she wants by tomorrow, I think. I think overall it's like 2-3 hours according to Daisy. But especially for those who are who are just don't have too much experience writing research papers, this will be a good resource to go to. And Haley will be talking about them tomorrow. I think this is the data. I'll give you the, but yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that, and I'm pretty much done with us today. Yeah, so those 3 recordings for tomorrow about the research paper writing, and a quick, I guess, and we'll have Dr. Schwartzman come in for the first hour to talk about this paper, and then the other research paper to look over by Wednesday, and I think that should cover everything. Oh, also the chemicals. Yeah, the occupation chemical exploration, if we can finish that. So yeah, that's it for today.